The old ranger, Kate Hayes, stared at the wolf pup. He'd limped 10 miles through the Montana blizzard, his eyes locked on her. That dying pup was leading her somewhere, and Kate knew the destination would challenge everything she believed. The pup's faith was absolute. The choice was hers, follow or fail. The wind howled a lonely song across the northern Rockies. 2 years after Kate walked away from the National Park Service, her career burned out by endless us versus them fights over wolf reintroduction, she found herself driving the winding, silent roads of glacier country. Now 60, she felt more like a ghost than a protector. She had parked her beat-up Ford Bronco on a high white ridge to catch the last light. Then the whimper, faint, unnatural. Kate crouched, peering under the heavy frame of the truck. There, huddled against the exhaust pipe for residual warmth, was the most stunning creature she had ever seen. A gray wolf pup. No bigger than a golden retriever puppy, but wild, untamed. His silver and black coat was matted with snow and dried blood. His little paws were a raw, terrible mess. He was panting, trembling. But he didn't growl. He just stared. Ice gold eyes met Kate's brown ones, and in that exchange, she didn't see an animal. She saw a soul asking for help. The raw trust in those eyes was a dagger to her heart. "You came to me, didn't you?" she whispered, the words freezing instantly in the thin air. She reached out, moving with the glacial slowness she had learned over decades with dangerous wildlife. The pup flinched, but he didn't flee. He let her clean the worst of the wounds. He took the fresh water. But when she offered food, he refused. He kept turning his head, focusing on a jagged peak in the distance. He was not lost. He was here for a reason. Kate, the battle-worn ex-ranger, suddenly felt hope for the first time in years. This wasn't a rescue, it was a mission. She secured her pack, looked at the peak, and nodded. She laid the pup down gently on the fresh snow. "Show me, little one," she commanded softly. He limped forward, instantly leading the way. But this was only the beginning. The real danger was still out there, watching. The first hour was a nightmare of exhaustion. The pup, injured as he was, knew every shortcut, every hidden traverse. Kate, though physically fit for her age, struggled with the altitude, her lungs burning with every thin breath. She felt the heavy weight of her 60 years for the first time on the job. She stumbled, falling to her knees in the deep snow. The pup stopped instantly. He didn't wait impatiently. He looked back, let out a short, soft whine, a clear signal. "Get up. Keep going." Kate pushed herself up, chastened. She looked where he had been looking, higher up the ridge, and her blood ran cold. Framed against the blinding white snow and the razor-sharp granite stood a massive male gray wolf, the alpha. Easily 150 pounds of muscle and dense winter fur, motionless as a statue. His head was held low, and his piercing golden eyes were fixed entirely on Kate. This was not observation. This was a challenge. The moment stretched. Kate felt the tension of her past rise up like a bitter taste. Years ago, she had championed the wolf reintroduction program, fighting angry local ranchers like Jeb, who saw the wolves as a threat, a symbol of federal overreach, and used dehumanizing language that always sickened her, that us versus them mentality that poisons any community. Kate realized her own struggle, her own burnout, was due to the crushing weight of that division, that subtle, persistent prejudice against anything other. And now the subject of all that division stood before her, judging her. The alpha's lips peeled back slightly in a low, rumbling growl that vibrated off the rock. A clear warning. The pup, her little guide, stepped forward. He stood between Kate and the alpha and whined again, but this time the tone was different. It was the language of kinship. It was a plea. The alpha held his position for 10 agonizing seconds. Then slowly, almost reluctantly, he dipped his head once, a brief nod of acknowledgement. He turned and disappeared over the ridge, silently like smoke. The pup gave Kate another glance and then continued his limping ascent. The test was over. She had been allowed to pass. But the deepest crevice of all wasn't in the mountains. It was where the pup was leading her, a place haunted by human greed. The pup led her higher, into terrain that grew increasingly treacherous. They left the snowy slopes and entered a narrow gorge choked with black ice and slippery shale. Kate had to use her old climbing spikes and ice axe just to keep purchase. The pup, despite his raw paws, pushed on with maniacal determination. Then they reached a flat, protected basin, and the pup stopped. He didn't just stop, his small body locked up. He let out a piercing, desperate cry, a sound of pure terror and grief. From the rocks nearby, a deep, sorrowful answer came back. It was the howl of the alpha female, unmistakable, but broken. Weak. Kate hurried toward the sound, her own heart hammering against her ribs. She recognized the place instantly. It was the site of the infamous Holloway mine, an illegal, abandoned prospect that had poisoned the water table and become a symbol of the ugly side of the local land use battles. The mine was owned by Jeb Holloway, the rancher whose racist-tinged language about foreign animals and federal interference had been a major factor in Kate's decision to leave the Rangers. This whole area, Kate knew, was a ghost of a deeper conflict, the conflict between conservation and exploitation, between compassion and prejudice. She scanned the ground and saw it, a gaping, jagged hole carved into the earth. The pup ran to the edge, his cries growing frantic. Kate approached cautiously and looked down into the darkness. 4 meters below, wedged sideways in a deep fissure where the mine shaft had partially collapsed, was the alpha female. The sight snatched the breath from Kate's lungs. The wolf was magnificent, massive and powerful, a force of nature. But she was helpless. Her front paws scrabbled uselessly at the slick, cold rock walls. Her ribs were showing beneath her thick coat. 3 days without food, trapped in the freezing shadow of a human mistake. As Kate stared down, the alpha female's golden eyes snapped up and met hers. In that instant, Kate felt everything converge. The old pain of the policy wars, the exhaustion of the climb, the sheer terror of what she was about to do. But most of all, she saw the recognition in the alpha's eyes. This wolf knew. She knew the human who had fought for her species. She knew the one the pup had found. Her gaze was a silent question that transcended language. "You came. Will you help us?" Kate pulled out her rope, but before she could descend, a new sound cut through the air. A soft, scraping noise from the ridgeline above. Kate didn't need to look. Decades in the wilderness had etched the sound into her mind. A cougar, a mountain lion. They stalked the Rockies, silent and deadly. This was the critical tension point. The trapped alpha female was too weak to defend herself. The pup was vulnerable, and the cougar, drawn by the smell of blood and trapped prey, was getting closer. The cougar was a metaphor for the final, unyielding force of nature, and it was hungry. "We don't have time," Kate muttered to the alpha female below. "I have to go fast." She quickly tied off her climbing rope to a massive granite outcropping. She had to descend. She had to harness the predator, and she had to do it before the cougar made its move, before the darkness of the mine and the darkness of human cruelty finally claimed this family. Kate took a deep breath of the freezing air. The battle wasn't just physical anymore. It was a confrontation with all the prejudice, all the division, all the us versus them mentality that had broken her spirit 2 years ago. To save this wolf was to save herself. She knew that descending into that dark pit meant facing a 100-pound predator, but she also had to face a predator from her own past, a failure she thought was buried. Kate began her descent, slipping into the cold, damp shadows of the mine fissure. The walls pressed in, rough granite scraping her parka. The pup whined continuously above, a nervous, high-pitched call that echoed eerily. 2 meters down, she stopped just above the alpha female. The smell was overpowering, musk, dirt, and metallic blood. Kate spoke in a low, steady voice, the tone she used to calm a spooked horse. "I'm here. I won't hurt you. Your pup brought me. You know me." She pulled out dried elk jerky, a potent scent. She tossed a piece. The alpha female caught it with a lightning snap, swallowing it whole. 5 pieces disappeared, and Kate watched the tension in the alpha's massive shoulders ease, just slightly. Hunger was appeased. Caution took over from desperation. Now came the impossible part, placing the webbing harness. This was the moment of absolute risk. Kate reached toward the wolf's head. As she did, her headlamp caught a detail that made her stomach drop. On the alpha female's left front leg, just above the paw, was a ragged, faded scar. It was the distinct mark of an illegal snare trap, a trap she had suspected Jeb Halloway of setting years ago, but could never prove. Betrayal. This wolf had been harmed by the very people Kate was supposed to protect her from. The revelation was a punch to the gut. It was a scar from the human side of the conflict. We failed you, Kate thought. I failed you. Yet when Kate brought the harness closer, the alpha female did something that defied every law of nature and fear. She lowered her great head. Consent. Tears stung Kate's eyes. She worked quickly, looping the heavy webbing over the wolf's head, down her thick neck, and securing the main carabiner under her chest. The wolf trembled, her muscles coiled with instinct, but she held still. Trust was given, a trust that should have been impossible, given the history written on her skin. Kate scrambled back up a meter and reached for her pulling rope. She clipped the main line to the harness and began to pull, her feet bracing against the damp rock. The weight was immense, 50 kilograms of dead weight, plus the friction of the stone. Kate threw her 60-year-old body backward, pulling with everything she had. Then the terrible sound. The granite outcropping she had used as her main anchor began to shift. A grinding, screeching noise, the sound of 1,000 pounds of stone moving. The anchor was failing. The alpha female below let out a strangled, low growl of terror as the tension briefly released and she dropped a few inches. I can't lose her now. Kate had to rely on a secondary, smaller anchor, an old mining beam she had clipped as backup. She transitioned her weight, the rope cutting into her gloves. The pain was immediate and searing. She ignored it. She screamed, a primal sound of effort and refusal to fail. But the ascent was the real killer. It wasn't just the weight of the wolf. It was the weight of every wrong choice, every failure, pushing back. Kate pulled. Her world narrowed to the rope, the burning in her lungs and the relentless, screaming ache in her arms. She used her legs, her back, every fiber of her being, knowing she was past her limit, pushing through pure, desperate will. This was her penance for leaving the Rangers, for the scars she couldn't prevent, for the conflict that had broken her. The rope slid centimeter by agonizing centimeter. Then the alpha female's head emerged from the mouth of the mine shaft. Her golden eyes were wide with shock, terror, and perhaps disbelief. She saw the sun, the pup, and Kate. She scrabbled at the lip of the hole, finally finding solid purchase. Kate pulled one last time. With a roar that tore from her throat, the massive wolf surged out, tumbling onto the rocky ground in a flurry of silver-gray fur, collapsing in exhaustion. For a terrifying moment, she was still. Had Kate broken her? Then the spell broke. The pup, her little guide, rushed forward with a cry of absolute, unfiltered joy and relief. He slammed his small body into his mother's side, nudging her chest. The alpha female's eyes opened. Slowly, her great head lifted. She saw her pup. The sound she made then was a sound Kate would never forget. It was not a growl. It was not a howl of distress. It was a deep, resonant, primal purr, the language of profound, absolute love. She crushed her pup against her chest with one massive paw and began to lick him, frantically, confirming his reality, his safety. Kate collapsed onto the snow, her body shaking violently from the adrenaline crash. Her hands were raw, bleeding through her gloves. She looked at the family, mother and son, reunited, whole. And she knew she had witnessed the deepest form of human value, not politics, not policy, but unconditional love and trust. The wolf's trust had just healed the human's broken heart. Kate stayed for 3 days watching over them as they rested and recovered. She left them elk meat and water. On the third night, as Kate sat by her fire, the alpha female approached. She stopped 15 meters away, the pup nestled at her flank. She looked directly at Kate, and then she made that soft, unique sound again, the chuff, the sound of kinship and acknowledgement. It was a wordless thank you. The next morning they were gone. Kate returned to the valley 4 months later. The snow was fresh. She looked around, the quiet vastness echoing her own solitude. Then she saw the tracks, large alpha tracks, and the smaller, heavier tracks of a nearly grown juvenile. And on the same flat rock where she had left the food, she found it, a perfectly intact snowshoe hare, recently hunted. The gift. She sank down in the snow, tears freezing on her cheeks. The wolves remembered. They had completed the circle of reciprocity. They had healed the breach, the conflict between us and them, between human and wilderness, between her past failure and her present self, was dissolved by a single act of radical trust. Kate looked at the gift, and then up at the high peaks. She whispered, her voice rough with emotion. "Thank you for reminding me. I haven't lost my purpose. We belong together." As she packed her Bronco for the long drive home, she felt a peace she hadn't felt since before she became an ex-ranger. She drove away, knowing that the greatest battles are won not with policy or anger, but with a simple act of love. The final tracks she saw were the imprint of a massive alpha paw in the snow, deliberately placed near the mine shaft, a signature. We are here. We remember. If this story of absolute trust and redemption resonated with you, and you believe that hope can heal any division, please hit that like button and share this impossible journey. And tell me in the comments below, what's the one moment of absolute trust you've witnessed in your life? We'll feature the best stories in our next video. Thank you for watching.